simply can't stand on the sidelines in elections with these big of consequences. So I appreciate the time to be here tonight and answer some questions, and I look forward to it.
Thanks so much for being part of this new grassroots revolution here. I want to thank both of my colleagues here for joining in the 6th District, the greatest district of all. And I want to give a little background. My beautiful wife, Kathy Jo, 36 years. She's the love of my life, my best friend. I've got 2 lovely children, 30 and 32, Josh and Nicole. And they really are exceptional individuals. But I want to talk a little bit about my background. Physics major from St. Cloud State University. Got to do what I always dreamed of doing, flying military aircraft. Flew the F-18, the A-7 Top Gun fighter pilot. I was an officer in charge of an F-18 squadron, and went to Washington, D.C. as a commander. Worked for 3 years there on plans and policy. Then went to be executive officer of a weapons test squadron in China Lake. I got out, retired at that point, and I got into a startup business, planted a patent dealing with light emitting diodes. 2002, got asked to run for the Minnesota House of Representatives by then Speaker Swigum. And in that process, won my election by 315 votes out of 15,000 cast. We door knocked the district. I know what it means to be behind, and I know what it takes to win. And so in that process, I was 4 terms in the Minnesota House. In the my last 2 years of the House, I was elected as the minority whip, where we held back $3.2 billion in tax increases the Democrats wanted to foist upon us. And in that process, I also did an investigation into some voter fraud that someone outside my district had told me about. In that process, came to find out that even a standing representative couldn't get any results, couldn't get any action in getting that resolved. Did an investigation, ran for Secretary of State, narrowly lost that one, but in that process really learned what it's going to take to win a statewide race in Minnesota. And that's why I'm running in this race, because I believe Senator Klobuchar is going to be a one-term senator. We can win this race, and I think with some of the strategies we're talking about, we can make that happen.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Hegseth. I'm seeking your Republican endorsement for the U.S. Senate race, and I'm honored to be here tonight. First of all, I want to thank all of you for what you're doing. As I go across the state, I'm meeting first-time delegate after first-time delegate, who's standing up and saying, enough is enough. Now is our time to stand up and fight. That's why I got into this race, because I can't conceive of another generation going along with the current leadership that we have. I've been in the race for 6 weeks, got in on March 1st, because I just got back from Afghanistan on a tour with the U.S. Army. And before that, and nobody serves alone. My wife Samantha's in the front here. She serves with me. And the military wives, they do work when they're at home. And she works I grew up in Forest Lake, right here in the 6th District, went to Forest Lake High School. I live in Stillwater today with my wife Samantha and our 20-month-old son Gunnar. We got another one on the way in August. And I've also, in addition to deploying to Afghanistan, deployed to Guantanamo Bay and Iraq. I was an infantry platoon leader with the 101st Airborne. And going overseas and serving our country and becoming a father have taught me many things, but amongst them, the time is very precious. And that what we have in this country is worth fighting for. And I didn't just fight for it on the battlefield, I fought for it here at home. I think the job that qualifies me most to run against David Klobuchar is I ran an organization called Vets for Freedom. It was a nationwide, nonprofit Iraq and Afghanistan war vets organization that existed to give voice to the soldier on the ground instead of the mainstream media. And I took it over in 2007. We had limited membership, we were $15,000 in debt, and I got the passwords to the website from the executive director. He said, good luck. And in a year and a half, we built it to an organization of 95,000 members. We had 50 state chapters across the country, the strongest one right here in Minnesota. And we raised $8.5 million to take it to then Senator Obama. We also, over the course of 2 cycles, helped 8 conservative Republican veterans get elected to Congress. You might know one of them, a guy named Alan West, was one of them we helped very closely. So we worked hard on the ground to do that. I was a Fox News military analyst. I wrote for National Review Online and did hundreds of TV appearances, taking it to the left, MoveOn.org, Code Pink, when we needed to. I've been in that fight. I'm a consistent conservative, believe in limited government, individual responsibility, the free enterprise system, and a return to the Constitution. These are the things we need. In order to beat Klobuchar, we've got to expose her record for what it is. And we've got to have the ability to turn the volume up high enough so that Minnesotans understand how she really votes. I've raised that money. We raised $160,000 in the first month. We're going to continue to raise money to build a great organization. You may have heard of a guy by the name of Chip Kravak. He beat Jim Oberstar, Chip Vast, campaign manager, is running our campaign. We can win this. With your help, we will. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, now on to the questions. We're going to move relatively quickly. Now this is a serious forum. There are serious questions. I know you guys are running against Amy Klobuchar, but there's nothing on Glee, nothing on Peep dioramas, and nothing on hot dish recipes. And only one on Justin Bieber. Okay, we're going to start with Dan Severson first. Which senator, and 1 minute answers, which senator would you seek out as a mentor and why?
Actually, I'd seek out Jim DeMint, and Jim DeMint has really been a pioneer in the process of standing up against the establishment at the Senate level. I think Mitch McConnell may have good intentions, but his methods are outdated, and they are no longer the things that are going to bring our country where we need to go. And that's about reform. That's about getting back to the Constitution. And I believe that Senator DeMint has done a tremendous job in starting to spur a vision for the Senate caucus there, and is actively recruiting Senate candidates with the same vision that it was generated in the Tea Party and our conservative get back to the Constitution values.
I think I would seek out a number of them. I don't think anyone has a monopoly on wisdom, but in particular it would be Senator Marco Rubio down in Florida. Here's a guy who won a race that no one said he could win, beat a liberal Republican, is what you might call Governor Chris, and no one thought he had a chance, and he stood up for his values, was a consistent conservative, fought against the establishment, fought for conservative principles across the board, and they resonated. Not just with Republicans, but across the spectrum, and he was able to win. He's gone to Washington thus far and fought for those same values. He's not a member of the establishment, and I think we need to add more people like him, fresh, young blood, bold leadership that will go to the Senate and will not cave, and will fight for the kind of conservative values we believe.
Thank you. I would have to say Jim DeMint as well, and the reason why is he's taken two great men under his wings already, in Rand Paul and Mark Lee from Utah. And they've actually come up with a plan, the platform to revitalize America. And that is a great, bold step. And being in the House for the last 2 years and seeing what a $6.2 billion deficit looks like, and being a part of the reforms and pulling down completely unsustainable spending trend lines and taking those votes, I think I could step right in and be a part of that team.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question, starting with Pete Hegseth. What committee would you seek to be on and why?
Well, I think we're able to serve on a couple of committees. I guess I would think first the Committee on the Budget. I think April 15th will be the third year in a row the Senate has not even passed a budget. I think the first thing we got to do is roll up our sleeves and do the work of passing a budget, and not a budget that just attempts to make cuts in the increase, but real cuts. Yeah. The actual cuts that are needed to make it happen. I would also seek out the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, because I think that is the backbone of our economy. Those small businesses across the country, we got to have people that understand it's not politicians that create jobs, it's small business owners. And it's the job of an elected official to create the space by lessening the regulatory burden and simplifying the tax code and really providing predictability. That's one of the worst things about Obamacare. Small businesses do not know what's coming next. And with my military service, I'd also would like to serve on the Armed Services Committee. I think I could look a few generals in the eye as a captain and ask them some tough questions.
And speaking of tough questions, it would be banking for me. Having gone through 15 years of teaching economics to high school seniors and showing them how our monetary base since Amy Klobuchar was elected has gone from $800 billion to $2.7 trillion that we know of. She needs to be asked, what tough questions did you ask Ben Bernanke? And the answer is none. She hasn't asked any tough questions of this man. So I would like to be on the banking committee to ask those questions, and having an institutional knowledge and teaching and educating others about the history of money and banking. I would look forward to that. Also, the budget committee would be a pick for me as well, for the reasons that I pointed out with Senator DeMint.
I would like to be on the Judiciary Committee, because I believe that this is a pivotal position that we have been advocating from the Republican side by not properly challenging the judicial nominations that have been going through, and we've really not done a good job in ferreting out the people that are believing that the Constitution is a flexible document. The Constitution is a document that is in stone that we need to go after and ensure that when we raise our hand and swear an oath to the Constitution, not just in the military, but in the Senate and in the House, that is a very serious obligation. And I would go after those judicial nominees and ask the tough questions. And the other would be the Armed Services Committee, because I firmly believe that what was done to the military this last go-around with the negotiations that took place is beginning to gut our military, and that is one of the primary purposes of Congress and the Senate, is to ensure that we have a strong national defense.
All right, the next question. What personal or professional experience do you have that qualifies you to be a United States Senator? Starting with Representative Mills.
Well, yes, thank you. And I don't think it's only the service that I've performed in the State House and on City Council as an elected role, but it's being a small business owner, especially with my wife and slamming those budgets out and looking at those costs and realizing that it's costing $140 to fill up our 12-passenger minivan now, because the price of gas has gone up. Understanding how those price pressures come to bear on families. We see those families in our daycare. We deal with them when they can't make payments because of the tough times these families have went through because of the policies that Amy Klobuchar hasn't stood up against. And she's voting with Harry Reid and President Obama every time, even though she comes back here and looks very nice. So I think it's that, and yeah, she likes to look nice in the papers. But that, and also just having an understanding of basic economic principles, having taught economics to 17 and 18-year-olds, being able to take that around the state and talk to people.
Well, I've spent 22 years in the military in senior leadership positions. I've been in Washington, D.C. for 3 years working plans and policy at the Bureau of Naval Personnel. I've been in the legislature for 8 years, 2 of those in leadership position in the Minnesota House of Representatives. We held back tax increases. We did some reforms in the first 4 years I was there. We held back the onslaught of all the bad stuff in the second 4 years I was there. So I've been on both sides of that process, and I firmly believe that those are some talents that we need in the Senate. Senator Klobuchar has advocated she is just a pretty face over there with not a lot of substance, and when you go to Washington, they say she's an empty suit. We can do much better.
Well, as far as experience, I talked about a couple of things. I think leading men in combat on foot patrols in Baghdad and Samarra teaches you a lot about yourself, a lot about what it means to be a leader and stick up in tough situations. I talked a lot about Vets for Freedom and what we did there to build an organization to push back against the misinformation of the mainstream media. When I was an undergraduate at Princeton University, I led the conservative publication there, which you can imagine made me a lot of friends. We fought back against liberals at every step. And we're going to need that when you look at the kind of issues at play in this election. If you look at the debt and deficit crushing this country today, we cannot afford to send spineless Republicans to Washington who speak like fiscal conservatives here, and then they go vote like Democrats in Washington. Right. We cannot afford that any longer. We've got to have the force to fight back.
All right, next question, starting with Dan Severson. If you could propose only one bill that it was guaranteed to pass no matter what would it be and why?
It would be a sunset clause on all federal departments and all regulations.
Yes.
I believe that for us to reduce the size of government, first we need to check against those things against the Constitution, which are legitimately supposed to be done at the federal government. I think we win half of those go away. The other is that we need Congress to take an active role in reviewing the performance of these agencies. As President Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life is a federal agency. And so we need to be able to review those and say, you know what, your purpose is no longer needed, your performance is subpar, and you need to go away.
I would join with the Republican president, with Congresswoman Bachmann, and 59 other senators to repeal Obamacare.
Well, knowing how long some of these bills have been that they've passed, I would choose the platform to revitalize America. But then, because it's any bill and we know how long some of the bills can get, we just tack on a balanced budget amendment and ending the Federal Reserve.
All right, next question, starting with Pete Hegseth. Who is your favorite president and why?
My favorite president is President George Washington. someone I've read about for a long time. Princeton University is set at the Battle of Princeton. And there were men a long time ago who fought back against tyranny across our shores. Here's a man who was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, who literally sat above it and was the leader of the writing of the Constitution, and is someone who served the first 2 terms as a president and then peacefully handed power over to John Adams. He handed over to Alexander Hamilton the task of reducing our debt, which he did. He made sure that the role of the government originally, the federal government, was to protect liberty, not take away liberties. He understood that, and then he walked away to his farm and handed it over to somebody else. They called him first in peace, first in war, first in the hearts of our countrymen, and I think that's where he should always be.
Yes, favorite U.S. president and why?
And I won't repeat what Pete said. So I'm gonna say I'll go with Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson. Died with 1 bullet in him from a duel he fought defending his wife's honor. Had 2 bullets taken out of him after 20 years because of a brawl that he was in when he was a young man. And in the first days of his administration, paid down the national debt in January of 1835. When he took office, he dismissed 20% of the federal workforce and single-handedly destroyed the second bank of the United States, which was creating a fiat inflationary pressure on the American people. He is the reason also why, and shows us how Democrats should have held on to the virtues of Jackson and shed the donkey, and instead they shed Jackson, and now they all look like jackasses.
My favorite president is Abe Lincoln, and then when you go to Washington and you see the Lincoln Memorial there, and you read his inaugural address, you read some of his second inaugural address, it is God-inspired. It is a man who has risen for a time of healing on a nation. He had a vision that was unpopular. In fact, he had to sneak into Washington, D.C. on the night after his inauguration because there were plots to kill him. And so his execution was a loss for America, because once he died, that whole process in which he was pushing forward for reconciliation of the South went along with it. And that's why we have a lot of the ills that we're working with today. But he was a man of vision. He was a man of healing for the nation. And I believe we're in that time now where we need healing in this process.
The next question, starting with Representative Bills. The Paul Ryan roadmap, agree or disagree, and why?
Yeah, that was laid out before. Paul Ryan has a BA in economics, very bright man, led us in 2008 creating the roadmap. I just think that Senator Mint and Senator Paul and Senator Lee have done a much better job and a much more aggressive job in what they've done with the platform to revitalize America. I know I've said it a few times, but I really believe in it. Although the roadmap does have some things in it that I think are valuable, namely privatizing Social Security, especially for younger people who lock their money away, totally eliminating the AMT, or the alternative minimum tax. So it has some valuable parts. It just doesn't balance the budget soon enough.
I tend to agree with some of the things that have been said here, with the Rand Paul coming forward with some of his reforms in terms of what are required for the Social Security and for the entitlement process, I think are actually key. And I think Paul Ryan has got a great plan that was put forth that began the discussion and really created a venue and a hope for the Republican Party to say, you know what, we don't have to just keep spending and spending. There is actually a plan here that the people can get behind. And the whole possibility of actually bringing the cost of government down and living in it within a measured cap is one of those things that I think gives the Republican Party a vision and a hope. And I think Paul Ryan has done some great stuff that we need to ascribe to and push as a party in this election process. Senator Klobuchar has basically put out, she thinks it's funny when they push a wheelchair off the cliff. That was his plan. That was a viable plan. We need to counter that.
No, it's true. Senator Klobuchar has not been a part of any budget process. And what you've got to give Paul Ryan is that he threw his marker down. He said, I'm not going to be a part of an empty discussion about rhetoric. I'm going to put a plan on paper and I'm going to defend it. and it's going to put us back to a balanced budget. It's going to do the types of things, not soon enough. Everyone wishes we could do it sooner. But President Obama and the Democrats are going to beat it back with cheap arguments at every step. He threw his marker down and he said, entitlement reform has to happen now. These massive drivers of our deficit, which will bankrupt us, we have to tackle them, regardless of how cheap the political arguments are against us. He looked at fee-for-service and Medicare and said, that's not going to get it done. We've got to look at a premium support plan. He looked at Social Security and said, there are some things we can do to make that solvent. You look at Medicaid, we can do block grants to the states and give more authority to the local level. He did the kind of hard work you need to do in the legislative process to put our country back into fiscal sanity, which is nowhere it is right now. So I commend him for throwing that down, support that plan and concept, absolutely.
All right, if I said there were 10 questions, we did edit them down beforehand. I apologize, we only have 8, so we have 2 more left. This one's starting with Dan Severson. Would you support NRA-backed bills like National Right to Carry Reciprocity or Second Amendment Sovereignty Act? Senate File 2205, a bill to prohibit funding to negotiate a United Nations armed trade treaty that restricts the Second Amendment rights of United States citizens. Would you like me to read that again? Would you support NRA-backed bills like the National Right to Carry Reciprocity or Second Amendment Sovereignty Act, which is Senate File 2205, quote, a bill to prohibit funding to negotiate a United Nations arms trade treaty that restricts the Second Amendment rights of United States citizens?
Yes.
Good answer. Pete, don't make me read that again. Don't make me read that again.
I won't. Not just yes, but hell yes. I mean, there's no doubt in this month. There's not a single thing we should do with our funding in Congress that cedes our authority to international organizations like the UN or the International Criminal Court. No one elsewhere who is not a U.S. citizen, who isn't a member of our elected body, should be making decisions about our rights. And so we shouldn't even be thinking about funding for that kind of thing. Of course I would absolutely stand up against it.
Yeah, I actually I have a voting record on this. I stand with Representative Cornish on the Stand Your Ground bill, so you talk about Second Amendment rights. Also, I have my own conceal and carry permit, so I could actually show you the permit is in my back pocket. And I think my parents say that when I was 4 or 5 years old, I walked out of their bedroom with a 410 asking, "Can we go fishing?" So grew up with guns, and I think Pete's absolutely right. We have to start looking at the UN. We can't fund negotiating with these people. We can't give up our right to the UN. Also the International Monetary Fund, which is a whole other bailout fund. And just to clarify, because I have some time, the platform to Revitalize America actually balances the budget in 5 years and pays down $2 trillion in debt in 10 years. If you haven't seen that, it just came out recently.
All right, the next
Do I
question.
get my other 55 seconds?
No, you don't. The next question, starting with Pete Hegseth. Do you support efforts to support democratic reforms abroad, both diplomatically and militarily, even if it means instability or anti-American forces taking power?
Can you ask that one more time?
You bet. Do you? Did I stumble?
No,
is it maybe?
I got it. Actually, I got it.
Okay.
No, I don't support reforms that would put anti-democratic forces in power. I think the recent examples of that are things like Egypt and Libya and Syria, and places where in Egypt we had Mubarak's not a great guy, but he recognizes the state of Israel's existence. He's an ally of ours. We've worked with their military, and we allowed him to be toppled. And what do we get now? The Muslim Brotherhood and other radical elements in that country. They're certainly not going to be our allies. Same thing in Libya, and then in Syria, we've got no consistent policy right now at the top, and you can see it. Because in Syria, you've got an avowed enemy of us, a satellite state of Iran, that seeks our destruction and the destruction of the state of Israel. And what are we doing? Nothing. But we allow Egypt to be toppled and handed to the Muslim Brotherhood. So absolutely not, we shouldn't be supporting countries that are or reforms that would bring about anti-American forces around the world.
With that, you also have to say that just the membership in the UN alone, the UN is a place where dictators show up and get to vote against us. And it happens on our own soil, which is disappointing. Also the fact that we throw money, printed or borrowed money, at these countries that have these dictators, that have these people who then lob missiles at people who we call our friends. I don't understand that as an economics teacher where the value add is in that.
I absolutely think that we have put out too much money to try and control external forces. You take a look at Afghanistan, which is known as the graveyard of empires, and we have vested time, blood, and treasure in that process. We're still there. Extracting ourselves is going to be an issue. I support our ability to eradicate terrorism, but the bottom line is I believe that as a country, we are a sovereign country. We need the ability militarily to go in, extract, eradicate, take care of the situation, and then take ourselves out. I did not support the Libyan process. I think the Arab Spring has gone far awry, and our involvement in that has been too much.
All right, that's it. I will hand it over to Dave Fitzsimmons. I was given a reminder that I need to thank the Tea Party, the quote, best part of the Republican Party, Jack Rogers. I did what you told me to.
Well, then that would make it official. Jack bugged me in the hallway. He goes, "You're the only one from stage that hasn't said Tea Party." So Tea Party, there you go. Better cheer. Gotcha. Thank you, gentlemen. You all did a great job, and I thank everyone for coming. I hope you had a good evening. Welcome you back for those that are delegates tomorrow. Not Joe, he got redistributed in the 4th. And he feels bad because I make fun of him all the time about it, so he cries. Hopefully the candidates know, in the 6th district, we'll perform for our endorsed candidates. We did that in 2010. Every single resident of the 6th district is represented in the Minnesota legislature by a Republican. Every single resident. But in addition to that, and I think what's even more in the 6th district has tried to carry the weight, and I have to make fun of the other districts all the time about it, is we far outpaced every other district in our performance for the statewide races. It wasn't even close. No one was even a close second on any of the 4 statewide races from the 6th district. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you running, and I appreciate all the work that everyone here does, and hope you guys know these people in the 6th district are going to work for you if you're endorsed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.